The topic that I and Yamnath sir is covering is about female masculinity by Judith Halberstam. So I'll cover half of it, or probably I'll go more than half of it, and Yamnath sir will cover the rest on his part. Okay, so this one is written by Judith Halberstam. It's really problematic to call whether she or he, because the topic that we're going to talk now deals about the very sensitive issue in terms of the gender, in terms of the gender neutrality or gender parity in a way. So Judith Halberstam, I'll call because while she was assigned as female at birth, but she goes by the name Jack, and he or his pronouns, she changed it. So the birth, the sex, the gender that she received at the birth is changed in a way. So am I audible and visible to all of you? So
Yes.
So she was born in 1961, but as I said, that she goes by the male pronoun. She wants to be known as Jack. And when I searched for her in the internet or in the YouTube, she's even currently a professor at American Studies, Ethnicities, Gender Studies, and then Comparative Literature in Southern California University, or I forgot the name, but she calls herself Jack because you can look at in her picture, she is very masculine. And the topic that in this book or the article that I'm going to talk about talks about the female masculinity. Masculinity, which is till now is normally understood as something that is associated with male, because masculinity is maleness, or masculinity is something synonymous to male. Because without male, we can't imagine masculinity till date, or this is how masculinity is defined. And she, in a way, tries to redefine the concept of the female masculinity, or because how she wants to achieve it is she gives some alternatives. She talks about the alternative masculinities, which has made it possible which has made masculinity more dominant. So she talks about the alternative masculinities too. She doesn't confine herself within these binaries of male and female. Rather, she says that these two gender division are not enough. They are not inclusive. And then rather she advocates for the others. Okay, she calls herself as a butch, as a girl, as a woman who has got the male-like or the boy-like characteristics, or body, figures, and things like that. So she focuses on the gender multiplicity and explores gender possibilities. Her aim is to that there is not only male and female, but we do have the assumption that if someone is not male, that should be female, or if not female, then male. So there is a tendency to regard gender binaries as male and female. But she says that, she highlights that there is a gender multiplicity, that gender male-female division is not inclusive enough to represent all the people. So, and she explored the different gender possibilities that goes beyond the male-female binarism, that transcend this traditional division. So she calls herself as a butch, a woman, and her aim throughout the essay or throughout the whole book, she tries to make her own female masculinity plausible. She wants to make people aware that she is a butch and she's not a male and she's not female, and she wants to show that not being male is not being female, or not being female is not being male. There is a gray line. There is something in between. And that she thinks that because she takes she gives a few examples of the United States where she says that the over 65% of marriages end up in the divorce. That means the traditional concept of the family, traditional concept of marriage, having a kids is now changed. The whole that unquestioned, or that something inevitable truth of life is to get married, is to have kids. That has been changed. So why not this gender binary is changed? Because that is also constructed. So that should be changed. That's her main idea. And so throughout this, she tries to make her female masculinity plausible, trustworthy. She wants to make it more credible and real. That she wants us to believe, wants us to wants to persuade us that there is much more, there are a lot more than male and female binaries. And she also understand female masculinity as distinct from male masculinity. She says that female masculinity is different, and then the male masculinity, that's her main aim in the book or in the essay. But the tendency is, what is masculinity, or how we have understood masculinity is, masculinity in Western context is associated, is linked with the men, or without men, the masculinity is not complete. So masculinity can be studied without men. That's our point. But we have been taught, we have been told since birth, and it's been our part of the DNA that we believe that masculinity is something to do with the male. Without male, there's no masculinity. But what our aim is that masculinity can be studied without men. But the problem is, where the problem lies, the main problem is that we do have a misconception, or the belief that it is tied to the straight white male body. Straight means heterosexual. It's not, homosexual. So masculine is something that is tied up to the straight white male body. And then all the time when masculinity comes up, that white male body stands together. Masculinity with the masculinity. So the definitions of masculinity somehow is incomplete without this male figure, without this white male body. But masculinity, she says, her aim is that it shouldn't be, it must not, it cannot, and shouldn't be reduced down to the male body, because masculinity is not that alone. Or female masculinity is there. There are other minority masculinities which has made this what's so called the male masculinity possible. So she says that it shouldn't be reduced down, because if we reduce down masculinity, or if we bring that masculinity to the male body, to define the male body, or the strong male body, strong white male body, then that's incomplete. That's our point. So it shouldn't be, it must not and cannot and should not be reduced down to the male body and its effect. That's our point. And all hitherto definitions or heroic masculinities, or these masculinity that we talk about, or the masculinity that we talk about, or the epic masculinity that depends on the subordination of alternative masculinities, it dominates all other masculinity. The female masculinity is dominated, the queer masculinity is dominated, the trans masculinities are dominated, and that is how it existed as a heroic masculinities. So she brings, to prove that one, she brings the myths, fantasies about the masculinity, which have in a way presented masculinity and maleness as something that is difficult to pry apart, that is something that is difficult to divide, that they are so integrated, that masculinity and maleness is so integrated that she brings example from myths, from fantasies, and from movies as well. This is how she defined masculinity. And masculinity in our society is something that invokes power. With masculinity, power comes up, okay? And with masculinity, there is a legitimacy comes up with masculinity, and privilege comes with the masculinity. This is how masculinity is defined. So masculinity is indicates the power of the state, and then it indicates the uneven distributions of wealth, which has been extended outward into the patriarchy, and outside into the society as a patriarchy, and inward into the family. So that masculinity has been dominant everywhere. So it represents the power of inheriting social privilege. It inherits the social privilege, it inherits power, it inherits the legitimacy. That is what masculinity is now. And she brings, some examples from the movies. So how dominant masculinity depend on the minor masculinities. To prove that, how this masculinity which is dominant is actually rely on the other minority masculinity. And she brings example of this James Bond 1995 movies Golden Eye. That's one movie which I have also watched. If you have watched it, what happens in the movie is that there is a female masculine character M. She herself is a butch woman, and then there is a gay masculinity of Agent Q. These are the two major characters of this movie, where rather than the male masculinity, the female masculinity is dominant. She is the one who dominates the whole of the movie, and where the Halberstam believes that here the epic masculinity, that heroic male masculinity, the masculinity which is attached with the male, is something merely that is prosthetic. That is a shadow of a powerful alternative masculinity, because what is dominant there is the alternative masculinity, not the male masculinity. So she says that masculinity masculinity that this gay character that masculine agent Q poses is nothing to do with the biological maleness. He's masculine not because he is male, or that the characteristic that this gay masculine character agent Q poses is something that has nothing to do with the biological maleness. So this masculinity abandons the white male bodies, that abandons it, and that presents as a more than that one. So if we look at some of the Nepali movie as well, this can be quite relatable to the Nepali movie Ama, if you have watched it, where the female character played by Panta, I forgot her name. She, when there's a death of her father, and then she does all the rituals, the cremation rituals, and she saves her hair, and then do all these things. That where rather than the male masculinity, the female masculinity is dominant in that movie, which we can relate it in that context. But her aim here, Halberstam aim here, is to show that this male that masculinity depends on the minor masculinity or the alternative masculinities, which she presented, which was in the movie Golden Eye, that of 1995. And then she talks about the concept of tomboy or the tomboyism. So tomboy, normally, that is, we frequently have seen that people even in our schools, college, that some girls are called as tomboy. So what is tomboy and what is tomboyism? Halberstam talks about this one. So tomboyism is a girl who enjoys a rough, noisy activities traditionally associated with the boys. So what we understand, when a girl, she poses characters of a boy, or acts like a boy, or denounces the role of the girl, or declines to accept that womanhood, she is normally said as a tomboy. And tomboy is generally described an extended childhood period of female masculinity. So that is an extended childhood period where the female shows her masculine characteristics. That's tomboyism. And tomboyism is fine until the baby, until the child is to its, before the stage of the puberty. If a girl child shows male-like characters until she reaches to the age of the girl, I mean teenage or so, that is acceptable. That is not punishable even in our context, and that's same in the Western context, as he said, because we can take an example of our own family. Because if our girls who are 4, 5, 6, 7, if they go to fight with the boys, if they wear the dress like the boy, or if they show characters of a boy, then we don't mind. We rather say that, look, my child is like a boy. She is not scared of going out, or she's not doing anything. She can even climb a tree, or she can fight, she can jump, she do this and that like a boy, or she's better than the boy. But that becomes problematic when she keeps on showing that characteristics even after she reaches to her adolescence age. So that becomes punishable, something that the families won't accept that if she keeps on showing that characteristics. So that is how tomboyism, she talks about the tomboyism. So it is. So she says that tomboyism is punished when it adopts extreme male identification. So when a girl reaches to the age of 14, 15, or say 18, 20, and then she even starts to take a boy's name, or refuses the girl's clothing, even starts wearing the boy's clothes, and extend beyond, if that tomboyism is extended beyond the childhood into the adolescence, that becomes problematic. That becomes something that is punishable, or something that is not accepted. So gender conformity, I mean confirming the gender, one gender, either male or female, is placed onto all girls, that they have to conform, they have to actually align with the sex, with the gender that they were assigned by birth. So if there is any variation, if they fail to align with the sex that they were born with, then there's a problem. This problem is on both sides, even to a boy or even to a girl, according to Halberstam. So she says that even gender conformity is placed onto all girls, not just tomboys, and this is where it becomes hard to uphold the notion that male femininity presents a greater threat to social and the family stability than female masculinity. And here she says that this female that male femininity, so those male, those boys who shows the female-like characteristic, that is even has a greater trait in social and the feminine history than the female masculinity. So she talks about the tomboy and the tomboyism. So she brings example about the tomboys from the narrative of the member of the wedding that was written by another writer. So this was a narrative. It tells the story of a tomboy. So this tomboy, what happens was that this tomboy, whose name is Frankie, she was at the age of 15, but she was not ready to, accept the female characteristics or wear the clothes of the girls. She even wanted to change the name, because this is quite symbolic, because changing, she says that changing name is much more, because name has got a lot inherited within it. So this, there was an, what she says is that in the tomboy narrative, the member of the wedding, that's the name of the narrative, the book, and where there is a struggle of a tomboy who rejects womanhood. So this was the summer when Frankie was 12 years old. She belongs to no club because she is a tomboy. She belongs to no club and was a member of nothing in the world. Frankie was an unjoined person who hung around in doorways, and she was afraid. She was afraid of the coming days. She was afraid that she belongs to nowhere. And I wonder if it is against the law to change your name. And some toward the end, she said that she wanted to change her name too, like change a name like boy to do it. Well, I don't care, or add to it. She wants to add on her name or make it something different. She wants to change it because she is not happy with the identity that she has. So the categories available to women, identification is inadequate, and the result of tyranny of the language. So it is the result of the language. It is the result of the language used, because the language is not flexible enough. It's not enough to include or to incorporate all those gender identities. Male and female binaries is not enough. So Frankie thinks that the naming, this is quite important to. So she thinks that naming represents the power of definition. Naming defines a lot. And name changing confers the power to reimagine identity. So when name changes, so from female to the male, when the name changes, then there is the power changing. It brings the power to reimagine the identity, place, relation, and even gender that happens everywhere. Like, for example, let's take an example. When you talk, if we hear the names like Jack, Catherine, or Julie, or Christy, we think that these people are all from the West. How we knew? Because just by the name. And we knew about when we hear the name like Muhammad, Akbar, then we believe that, the person probably belongs to Pakistan or somewhere. Okay, so this is how name represents the power of definition. The name defines, and the changing name obviously confers the power to reimagine the identity, and even to the place, relation, and even to the gender. That's what Halberstam tells here. And on top of that, she talks about the queer methodology. So queer signifies sexual and gender identity other than straight and the sex gender. That means birth sex. So something that is not straight or not sex gender is queer. That's queer signifies that one. She calls this methodology queer because it attempts to remain flexible enough to respond to the variation of the female masculinities. So there are various variations of the definitions or the various variations of female masculinities, but queer methodology incorporate that it gives enough space for all these methodologies, and it even betrays the traditional, or it is disloyal to the conventional disciplinary methods. So that's what this is how she calls the queer methodology. She says that Halberstam calls herself as anti-disciplinary. She says that she is against that one. And so she advocates for this queer methodology. So queer methodology, it doesn't provide a proper history like historians. It doesn't focus on literary texts like literary critics. It doesn't deploy the traditional social science research tools. It doesn't do that all, but it studies from its own perspective. That's queer methodology. It shows the failure of, it says that the social science failed. The research that is carried out in social science, that is failed, that is inappropriate, that is not adequate approach. Because when she gives an example of analyzing the sexual behaviors, because she gives example that when people using the social science research try to understand the sexual behavior of the male or the female, that is not possible. She says that because what happens behind the door, inside the door, is we never know. All right, and we rely on the information that is provided by the people. So there is a tendency of male exaggerating their sexual behavior, and then women doing the reporting downplays. I mean, they don't readily accept about the activities, that physical activities that happens behind the doors, and then male have the characteristic to exaggerate it. Okay, so because of these things, social science research is not capable to understand it. So that's where the social science fair, Halberstam says that one. And okay, it shows the failure of the social science approach to analyze sexual behavior is there is no way to find out what people do in the bedroom. The traditional approach believes on what they say, and then this traditional approach simply try to reiterate those ideas they already think is right. Okay, this is not more than that. So she brings that Lewontin argues that people tend not to be truthful while reporting about their sexual behavior. This is a queer one of the researcher, and then she talks about this exaggeration and the downplays male and the female in terms of the sexual behavior. So thus it is the limitation of social science surveys, which reiterates that the research is believed already to be true. So in place of this social science research, she advocates for the queer methodology, which is what she says has rather lacked history like the historians, which lacks the literary texts like the literary critics, but it employs something, it has got those characteristics which can reach to the truth or close to the truth, according to the Halberstam. And queer methodology is a scavenger methodology that uses different methods to collect and produce information on subjects who have deliberately or accidentally. So it gonna explore, scavenge those things which were deliberately or accidentally, or intentionally or unintentionally excluded from the traditional studies of human behavior. So queer methodology gonna bring that out. Queer methodology going to bring that out, which were ignored by these traditional studies or the traditional methodologies or the disciplinaries. That is going to bring them out, which were either intentionally or unintentionally marginalized. That's what she argues. And queer methodology, it attempts to combine methods that are often cast as being at odds with each other, and it refuses the academic compulsion toward disciplinary coherence. So it doesn't. That's why she calls herself as an interdisciplinary, because it doesn't cohere. It doesn't go with the traditional approach or traditional methodologies or philosophies. That's queer methodology. And another idea that she brings forward is the constructive masculinities, or how masculinity is constructed, and the way the white male masculinity has obscured all other masculinities. She says that this white male masculinity is so dominant that it has obscured, it has dominated, subordinated, and then blurred all other masculinities. And the traditional 90s society is unwilling as well as unable to acknowledge the gender indeterminacy. That should be the gender determinacy. Indeterminacy is something that is worthless. Okay, there should be either male or the female. So instead, explaining figures like the stone boots. So what they did was they explained the stone boots or the tomboy or androgyne as a pathology or deviance. They simply said that that is the deviance. If someone doesn't belong to either male or female, that is deviance. And she argued that it is important to contextualize a discussion of the female and the lesbian masculinities in direct opposition to the masculine, which remain the property of the male bodies. So the masculinity shouldn't be the property of the male bodies, and then it should be seen rather in relation to the lesbian masculinities and other alternate masculinities. Likewise, the Western society that denies to admit ambiguously gendered bodies into functional social relation and even denies the recognition of masculine women and the boys, girls. So that is because of this result. I mean, because of these things, but things have changed since the 90s, because we can see in the current days that the LGBTQ communities or how they have given space in literary, or let's say in regular way of life, or in other activities or other mainstream politics that's been given. But when I saw one of her interview of Judith Halberstam, she was very critical of Donald Trump as well in terms of the LGBTQ. So Halberstam, she brings her own stories that argues that a number of theories have failed to produce alternative masculinities, though they tried it. The alternative masculinities are still subordinated, so she makes her own female masculinity plausible. So by doing this all, she tries to make her own masculinity more plausible, more credible and the real. And this is what she says, that I've been stigmatized by masculinity that marked me as ambiguous and illegal. She called herself as a butch, and then she was been the victim of this binarism, and then because she is abused, she is harassed because of this all. She now found her own identity. She challenged this one. She denied, she threatened, and she violated this all. And she found her identity as the butch. That's what Halberstam says about the gender ambiguity. Now, to talk about, she brings forward the problem of the bathroom problem. Bathroom problem that we see, that is male and the female's bathrooms are there, but we don't see the bathrooms for other minorities or the trans asterisk. She calls it trans asterisk. That means the asterisk is there because that includes all others, transgender or transsexual, the LA, gay, lesbian, or any identity that won't feel compatible to identify themselves as male or female can call it trans asterisk. That's what Halberstam calls. So she brings example that when she entered into the female toilet, because her body was like a male, and then people thought that male entering to the female bathroom, and then they called the security. And she says that as soon as I entered the female toilet, then someone was knocking at the door. Upon security here. So she says that I had once again been mistaken for a man or a boy, and some woman had called the security. So this is that's bathroom problem, which we seem is not a big issue. It's a small issue, but that she says that this bathroom problem is the big issue because it has limited the movement of this LGBTQ or the trans asterisk people to the family sport and not far, because when they go far, they fear of going to the bathrooms, and this fear of going to the bathroom is the fear of exploring the outside world, because they fear to go outside. Their opportunities are limited, their places are limited. They can't go far because there is a bathroom problem. They couldn't go to the male toilet, they couldn't go to the female toilet, and there's no toilets for them. So why do we still operate? She says that why do we still operate in a world that assumes that people who are not male are female, and people who are not female are male? So why this is really ridiculous that she says that we still believe that if someone is not male, then that's female, or vice versa. So similarly, she brings this bathroom problem. She brings examples from this Leslie Fleming's narrative Stone Blues, where there was a character whose name is Jess, and she always praised that she doesn't want to go to the bathroom, doesn't want to use the restroom. She says that I got to use the bathroom. God, I wish I could wait, but I can't. So look at that pain of not being able to use the bathroom because she'll be mistaken for a male, and then there will be a problem all the time. And then there you can read the story that when she enters to a bathroom, that the female says that who is that? Is that a man or a woman? And then she has to finish her things really quick because she fears that they're going to call the security. So to avoid that one, she rushes and then she do really quick. So that's bathroom problem. It represents a limit to their ability to move around in the public sphere. So this bathroom problem is not just the bathroom problem. It limits them in all the areas, which really tells the problem faced by the people who do not identify themselves either as male or female. So this is the problem of all of them. So Yamnath is going to talk more about this bathroom problem and the constructive masculinity on his presentation. So this is all from my side, and thank you all. If you have any queries or anything, I'm really happy to answer that.